What have you eaten today?
Um, I had an egg sandwich. It's just two eggs, and I put like some cilantro and um, some cheese and some hot sauce between two eggs. Um, that was my breakfast, and I had some mousse tomato crujat, and that's all I've had for lunch so far
Way
today.
to go, high protein.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I went to the gym this morning, so I needed an extra kick of protein. I did eat some carne seca too today. So,
Oh, well, that sounds good. And what's on for the menu for the rest of the day?
um, I'm not really sure because after this, I've got like 20 things happening this evening. So it Mondays usually end up being we take our son to drum practice, and we often just go grab something while we're out. Usually, like I really like to stop at Barnes and Noble, and
Uh-huh.
they have a cafe, and they have these great little quiche kind of things. Usually, we grab one of those or something. So
Oh,
Mondays
nice.
aren't Mondays aren't usually good cooking days for me.
So did you say Monday is practice for the boys?
Yeah, our youngest does drums on Monday.
Now, is
Yep.
that rock and roll drumming or is that for school type drumming?
Um, Funny enough, it's just rock and roll drumming, and he's been in drums for like 4 years, and they won't let him join his school drum thing unless he knows how to play piano too. I'm like, it's I don't really understand that. It's not like he just wants to get in there and bang around. He actually knows what he's doing, but they won't allow kids to play drums unless they can play piano.
Another oddball equation when it comes to the educational world, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How do you divide your time up between successful YouTube channels and having a family that you want to be able to take care of, and of course taking care of yourself? What is that all about? Your time.
Mark and I often during the school year take turns traveling. Sometimes we do take trips together, and grandparents come and stay, or things like that. But generally speaking, we take turns so that somebody's always with the kids.
Hmm.
And I don't know, it's definitely juggling. I mean, we try to plan our trips out ahead. We look at the school schedule and things like that. As soon as we get a school calendar, we're already marking it up, trying to figure out where our stuff is. So
Yeah.
um, it's tough when you travel. We try not to take real long trips during the school year, and we do definitely travel during school vacations and just drag the kids along.
How has your YouTube channel, which really does revolve around travel a lot and food and so on, which we'll talk about later, how has that been affected by the kids growing up during this past, let's say, decade or so?
Well, in the beginning, they loved it and they participated and they thought it was great fun. And that, especially with our now 16-year-old, that kind of fell by the wayside. It's not cool, right? Like he doesn't want
Right.
people to know who we are or what we do as far as the YouTube stuff goes. Maybe when we hit 1 million subs, he'll be excited. I mean, apparently 950 isn't enough for him. So
Oh, that's so funny. It's coming soon. It's pretty wild the way the kids are. They're connected at the hip to mommy and daddy until a certain age. Then they don't want to be near you. They don't want to know from you. And then we
yeah,
all finally realize that mom and dad were right.
yes, they'll find it eventually. We just sit
Yeah.
back and wait for it.
So how do you plan your trips knowing that, he's not really into it, the young one is, and how do you really go ahead and do that?
So we're just careful about, I mean, we take a lot of b-roll as we walk around. Mark will just have the camera up, and or a phone or whatever, and things that interest us, right? Or things that people need to know about. And so we get a lot of b-roll. We try to make sure that he's just not in them. I mean, we respect his wishes. Occasionally he'll pop in like in the background or something like that. But generally we just try to respect his wishes and not have him in that. We don't put like on our Instagram and stuff where our kids are. Liam's in there occasionally, but our eldest is just not. I just
Hmm.
try to respect that for him. Yeah, and Mark does a lot of his big filming, like when he's ready to like do the big, like the don'ts of Paris or whatever. He gets up and goes in the morning. partially because the city's quieter, there's less stuff going on, and he can really just plunk the camera down and do a whole bunch all at once. And so he does that in the morning while the kids and I take our time getting ready. And, because our trips aren't exactly like a normal person's vacation, because, well, one, we travel. We're not just there to relax. We're never there to relax. So he does the work stuff first, early in the morning, and then we'll go out, all four of us, and explore and, soak up the culture and the food and all those things afterward.
When it comes to the food that's all over the world, I guess you've been to maybe about 100 countries by now.
No, I'm not. Mark's a lot closer to that number than I am.
Uh-huh,
um,
uh-huh.
I think I'm somewhere in the 60s. I'm not really sure. I have to always kind of check. Somewhere in, I know I've surpassed 50 quite some time ago. Um, that's kind of like, that was the benchmark, and I haven't hit 100, so I'm somewhere in between. Um, yeah, so the food, we just enjoy it. I mean, we eat a lot.
How could you not? You must be really able to discern different flavors and tastes and textures and aroma and color and all that. If you were to take the best few countries that you can think of, where would you say that your food specialties are?
Um, for what I like or what I like to cook.
Well, let's start with what you like, what you enjoy.
Probably Greece, France, Italy. Those are my top for visiting and eating. Ethiopian food is one of my favorites, but I've yet to go to Ethiopia, but I'm getting there. I promise
Hmm,
that's going
hmm.
to happen soon. And surprisingly, Peruvian food. That was, another place that I really enjoyed the cuisine. So those are like my top five, generally speaking.
For the
And
people who haven't been to, let's say, Italy or France or Greece, how would the foods that you find here in America differ from the actual places?
freshness is a big part of it,
Uh-huh.
particularly when I think about Greece. My family's Greek, and so I make a lot of Greek food. I mean, I grew up cooking Greek food, and theirs is all very, very fresh. I mean, there's a lot of fruits and vegetables, tons of them. And it's, like you get octopus, and it's literally, they getting octopus is it's quite a thing. I've done it once, and it was amazing to do on my own. But they literally pull it from the sea and you eat it that night.
Wow.
So it's never frozen and then unfrozen and sitting behind glass ever. You're literally getting it right off the rocks that it's been drying on sometimes. So yeah, the freshness. And we all think of like Italy as just pasta, and it's really not. I mean, yes, there's a ton of pasta, and every town has its own special little pasta. Like when you go, down to Puglia, they're really famous for orecchietti. It looks like a little ear, like the
Uh-huh.
little, rolled up bit thing. Um, and they're all over, and you get them from little old ladies make them and sit and sell them by the bagful on the street, but they literally just came out of their kitchen. Again, so that freshness thing. And yes, there's a lot of pasta, but there's also, they have incredible steaks in Italy,
Mm.
oddly. And I don't know, there's just a lot of other things. It's not just pasta. um, I love panna cotta, and recently I've noticed in Italy they're changing up the panna cotta. Like I had some with pistachio, and I had some with lemon, and like they're just adding new flavors to it that are also still very traditional. They're just putting them in something in a new way, which I love. And then French food. Oh, French food. I love it. But what I've learned in I've been to France, I don't know, at least a dozen times, probably more.
Mhm.
It's all very simple food. Like we think it, because it tastes so elegant and it's so rich, that it must have a lot. But when you start cooking it, it's just really simple. There's not a ton of ingredients. It's just, you have really good ingredients. And I think timing is a big thing in French cuisine.
You know, it's interesting. The last time I went to France, I wanted the classical, famous French cuisine. And it seems like they're getting further and further away from that. And they're doing more of the farm to table and more of the fresh stuff. But, I was dying to get mussels and frites and, cream sauces and
Yeah.
all that. Just couldn't find it. It was so funny.
Where were you?
Well, in Paris at that time,
That's
just looking
why.
for the traditional old world stuff.
Yeah. So I find you're very right. In Paris in particular, sometimes you'll find those things in the really touristy places, but they're not very good. But I find that like when you get off the beaten path a little bit, you'll find those things like Normandy. Oh my gosh, I love oysters from Normandy. I think they are my favorite in the entire world, and you can get tons of fresh ones, but maybe not in like a big town. Go to like the little fishing village, that I find that you can still find all the traditional things from the different regions
Hmm.
in small towns.
So when you're in Normandy eating oysters, how are you eating them? Are you eating them raw? Are you eating them cooked or just whichever way they come?
Oh, raw. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
I would never, I will eat fried oysters or Rockefeller or whatever, I'm fine with all of that. But if they're oysters from Normandy, I am eating them raw. Sometimes they put and I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, but the Marionnaise sauce, it's
Uh-huh.
like vinegar and whatnot. It's on the side. I don't even use that because their oysters are so sweet and cool and oh, they're refreshing. I could just eat dozens.
And so while you're eating your dozens of oysters in Normandy, what are you drinking with it?
Whatever white wine they tell me to have.
Uh-huh.
I am very okay with, especially in those wine producing countries, just to say, what do you recommend? And often it's not even something big and fancy and expensive. It's just, their house white because they they keep that as their house white because it goes with their main food, right? So
So do people ever suggest champagne or something to go with the oysters, or is it usually just a white wine for the most part?
it's usually just a white wine. I don't
Uh-huh.
know that I have had champagne with oysters, but I don't think I've ever had that in Normandy. I did have that actually in January. I went to Paris with a friend of mine. Um, and I asked and they gave me champagne and I couldn't even tell you what kind it was or anything. It was just what they told me went well.
When you're shooting all these videos with Mark for Wolters World, what other video channels are you shooting for as well for yourself?
We do Wolters World Eats. I make Mark do most of the face stuff because I get real uncomfortable in front of a camera. Like I'm okay with this because I'm talking to you, but when I'm
Yeah.
standing, in Park Monceau and in Paris, and I'm standing there talking to a camera, I feel like a buffoon. I'm not comfortable. I'm getting better, but I like to do those things like inside where I
Right.
don't have, random people. I'm not comfortable with people like standing there staring at me. Mark's a showman. He should be on stage. He can do that. I'm not very good at it.
I know most of us regular humans are kind of self-conscious. We don't want people off camera looking at us while we're doing our
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable for me. So
Besides Walter's World and Walter's World Eats,
mhm.
is there another primary channel that you're doing now?
No, I am trying to make like short videos for our shorts channel,
Hmm.
and also for my Instagram. Just like, when I went to France and then also we went to Italy, my friend and I in January, and I did a bunch like why you should travel with your kids. So I just took my top 10 things, turned my phone on myself and just talked about those things. So like why you should travel with your kids, the don'ts of traveling with kids, like, you don't forget to take time off and take them to the park to play, those kind of like little tidbits.
You know, I was talking to Mark. He was on the show recently,
Mhm.
and I was talking to him a little bit about the marketing aspects of putting together your headlines and your thumbnails and so on, like that. And
Mhm.
I asked him about the way he entitles, or the way that the two of you entitled the Wolters World thumbnails. It would be the don'ts of so and so or such and such, or what to watch for, the scams of this city or that city. And it seems quite ingenious in a way. Do you guys collaborate on all of that?
He always asks me to come in and look at the thumbnails. I'm like, you have too much stuff on here. I can't read it, you know. So I think I do more with like the visual and creative stuff. I went to art school, so
Mhm.
that's in the back of my head. And Mark went to business school. You know, he has PhD in business, and my degree is in architectural history and historic preservation. So BFA is like my brain works differently than his. So we collaborate on like different ends of it, I guess.
Right. So one of you is the right brain, one of you is the left brain,
Very
and
much.
together you make a big brain.
You know, I hope so.
So, Jocelyn, how has your feminine input and wife like input helped the channel? Because I'm sure that you're always, like I mentioned a moment ago, probably collaborating on a lot of different elements of the finished product. So, how do you think you've changed the overall quality?
Well, I think that generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, men and women look at the world very differently. Um, and as a woman, maybe sometimes I'm a little jaded about things like safety and being taken advantage of, because, you know, the world's been ruled by the patriarchy for a really long time. And so
Right.
I come at it from maybe a little bit different perspective. And not that Mark isn't like paying attention to those things or trying to think about them. He just, I mean, he's a man and he doesn't experience things. We all experience things differently, right? So I
Hmm.
try to, you know, I'm like, well, you know, you see it this way, but I see this. And he's like, oh, wow, I get that. I never would have thought of that. You know, it's just, it's okay that we're different. It's, you know, part of life. I mean, it's, I think that's also something I've learned about travel is that, you know, all people have intrinsically, we all want our families nearby. We want love, we want friendship, we want health and safety and all those things. And the things where we see things differently like that are like beautiful. And that's what makes the world such an amazing place. That those differences should be celebrated, and to see things from someone else's perspective is like a really wonderful gift.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. I wanted to ask a little bit about how you guys are staying mentally healthy and physically healthy while you're traveling so much because, during that whole COVID thing that was
Yeah.
going on, so many of us just didn't move out of our house. We were just kind of twisting in the wind, waiting and looking at you guys on YouTube and wondering what's going on. And so how do you just remain sane in your head when life is doing what it's doing?
um, well, I'm a big reader. It's kind of my escapism. Can you tell? I have a lot of books.
Oh yeah.
Um, and during COVID, I had never read romance novels before in my life, but I don't know, one got suggested on my Kindle, and I started like devouring these because, excuse the pun, it's unintentional, but they all had a happy ending, you know, like there it was this.
I'm sure they do.
But I mean, like everybody, everything turned out great in the end. I could not take any books. Like books were my escape, but I couldn't handle anything that was sad or miserable. I mean, I just, that was really hard for me, anything that was heavy. So for me, it was all about, you know, reading happy things. We played a lot of games with our kids. Like we played a lot of card games and things like that. Like just, I mean, even if it's just Uno, you know, um,
Yeah.
that was a thing for us, just like spending time together. I don't know. I think that we all failed a lot during COVID. Like um and sometimes you kind of beat yourself up over how things worked out, but you know, none of us knew what was going on, right?
Right, right.
So it wasn't easy, but we also, I think, a big thing that helped was that we on for much of the first, I don't know, 6 or 8 months at least, we did two um, bi-weekly lives on our YouTube channel.
Right. Those are
That
delightful.
Well, thank you. It kept us sane, but it also created this great community. And we didn't create it. The people who watched created it. We just gave them a platform. But what came out of that, there is this a big group of people of our followers who've become friends, who travel together now, who, like they may live on different continents or, across the country, and they have become friends. And that kindling those things was just fantastic for us. And I'm glad we were able to give somebody that we were big enough that we could give people that place. We could attract enough people that they were able to start something themselves.
It's so cool that you guys have been able to unite so many people through what you're doing. And it obviously looks like you really love what you guys are doing when you're out there.
We do. I mean, it's not always fun and games.
Right,
But
right.
we do. We love to travel. We love to meet new people. We love to spread the knowledge, because I
Hmm.
really feel like the more we spend time with other people from other places, the more respect and goodness comes into the world, right? So, to be able to help others, to like help facilitate, that's awesome, but it's not us doing it. We're just a platform. The people are doing it themselves, I think.
So, do you ever see a point where you just are going to be just so slammed busy with so many millions of followers that you won't be able to have the human engagement and do this kind of a thing very often?
Nope. I can't imagine that. I
Great.
mean, like I look at my travel hero is Joseph Rosendo. He's
Hmm.
on PBS, and I think that he is incredible. I would imagine a lot more people know him than know us, and he's still doing it. He's
Right.
he's off doing it, and he's authentic, and that authenticity is something that we strive for. So, if it means that while Mark is filming videos, people stop and or they're like, "Hey, Wolters World guy," and it happens. I'm grateful for those moments. I think
Yeah.
it's great to be able to connect with people.
How has the architecture changed throughout the countries, let's just say Europe, for instance, over the past number of years, as far as the more modern stuff? Because the older stuff I definitely want to talk about and get your feeling on that. But how do you see the new modern architecture coming up?
Um, that's a really difficult question for me, being
Mm-hmm.
that I studied the historic. Um, I don't dislike it. A lot of people who study architectural history and things don't appreciate the new stuff, but I look at all architecture as sort of like anthropological. It shows how we live and how we work. Like you can go into an old building and you can figure out what was important in their lives, or like in Chicago, there's this old office building that is now a hotel. But walking in there, you can see it. There's small offices with these doors that were glassed over, and just how things worked. Even things as simple as mail chutes that we would never have now, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you walk into a new shiny steel and glass. That's talking about like our industry and how we have come up from like handmade things, right? And now we have this industrial stuff, and we have these big airy spaces because we're in buildings a lot, but we're trying to bring in the light and all of, that airiness, and there's plants and things and bright colors in the artwork and stuff like that. So I see it as an explanation of how we live and how we work and how we play.
You know, that's a really good point because I think that a lot of people who go to Europe, let's say for the first time, they have in their mind's eye these predetermined images that says
Mhm.
France is going to look like this and England
Mhm.
is going to look like that or Holland is going to look like this. And then you do see these big glass and stainless structures, just like you're saying, very airy, very light, and it is completely different from the old charm of the old world, right?
It is. And as long as we keep some of that old world charm, I'm cool with it. Don't tear down
Yeah,
the old stuff.
right.
Um, the greenest building ever built is one that's already been built. So that's an important thing to me. That's a good reason to keep things and to rehab them rather than tear them down, put all of that into a landfill and then build something new. But I'm not against building new things, even right next to something that's old. Like um I can tell you, like, for instance, in Savannah, there was a house that had to be torn down on Jones Street. Jones is probably the most iconic residential street in downtown Savannah in the historic district. And this house on a corner had to be torn down because it was just there was no fixing it. And this was quite some time ago that this happened. And the people that built there built a very modern house, but and I love that it was modern. They're not trying to mimic the old, they're not trying to fake it, but they built it in the same proportion as the older homes. So although it was very like mid-century, very plain and austere, the colors, the perforations, like the door and the windows and things matched what was going on around it, but with a very different look. I like the juxtaposition. I think that it's a beautiful thing, but I think that um, in historic settings, we should try to do things like that where we're not like dwarfing the old thing, like a lot of buildings. It would be silly to build a skyscraper next to that, like all this, the buildings are like maybe 3 stories. You don't want a 7-story building next to that. That would look out of place and it would detract from the overall, right?
A couple moments ago, you were mentioning the greenest building in the world. Which one is that? Is that in Singapore?
No, the greenest building is one that's already been built.
Uh-huh.
It's just anyone, like any
Anyone.
building
Oh,
that's
I
already
see.
done. That
Okay.
it's a preservation thing. We all say things like that. I guess that probably doesn't translate well to people who don't study preservation, but just the idea is that, if it's already done, then you're not pillaging the earth for more stuff to build something new, right?
Hmm. Do you have
Yeah.
background in city planning as well as the architecture and the art?
No, of course, to get my degree, I had to study some city planning, and we
Yeah.
certainly look at the historic fabric of a place when we're studying individual buildings because most are, there is other stuff around. So, but not planning, more just like what's already there.
Hmm. Do you find it strange that over the past 10 or 20 years, we went from a society that hardly ever had their phones in their hands slash cameras to now a society that is constantly walking around with selfie sticks and doing on camera stuff? I mean, we really went from like one extreme to another. Now people can hardly sit down across from each other face to face like you and I are without playing on their device. Isn't it a wild world?
I hate it. um we've taken the humanity out of being social. Yes, we're all connected and we have this social media is like it's endemic, right? Like it's everywhere all of the time. But we're losing that human factor, I think, in that, and I just kind of disgusts me sometimes, when I sit down somewhere and I see a family, like for instance, we're in, I don't know, wherever. We're in El Salvador.
Uh-huh.
And there's this other American family, and they're all sitting to eat. And rather than like eating the food and relishing it and talking to their family about it or the things they saw that day or whatever, they're all like this and taking pictures of the food. The food looks amazing, great, but like, oh, I just want you to sit and savor it, and talk about it with your family and talk about the things you did. We often try to just swipe our kids devices for long periods of time. We used to be really good about having, a 28-day rehab from
Hmm.
electronics. And we still had to have ours, but we kind of made it like only during working hours when we would have our phones or our computers. We've been really lax in that lately. I hate to say
Yeah.
that, but it was always really good. But I tell you what, the first week was rough on everybody.
Right. Well, it's like lopping off a limb from your body because we're connected to the device now. It's almost like a part of us.
Yeah, it's really nice though. After the first few days, when there's freedom in it. It's kind of awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so wild to go to a nice restaurant or even just a fast food place and just see two people sitting across from each other doing texting to someone else.
They're
And
like this.
they're just they're feeding their face. There's like no thought, there's no mindfulness, and they're trying to connect with others. So they're not present for me or you. And it just seems like that's a breakdown. That's not the grand promise was to bring us together. And it just seems like everybody is further apart.
Yeah, you're connected to so many people, but those connections are just wispy. They're just
Hmm.
thin and wispy, and rather than a good strong tie to somebody.
We should make a DMZ, so to speak, of cell phones, like never to be at the table and to sit and savor the moment and enjoy the people that we're with and take care of
Yeah.
that relationship before worrying about all those people on the periphery.
Yeah, we definitely have that rule at our table. There is never a phone at the table unless like in our conversation we need to look something up. We actually do employ Google occasionally at the dinner table, but
Uh-huh.
generally speaking, only so that we can facilitate the conversation, right? Like we might have to look up a statistic or something and then it goes away and we continue the conversation.
Right, right. Now, I asked earlier about health. How do you guys stay healthy when you're on the road? Because travel is really, really difficult on the body. And then, of course, eating the right kinds of foods and being able to get your meds and all of that. How do you kind of interweave all of that?
Okay, well, hang on.
You bet.
Mm,
I understand.
we drink a lot of water.
Good.
Um, uh, so I think that partially knock on wood,
Hmm.
we don't get sick very often, and I think it's because we've encountered germs all over the world.
Right. High
So
immune system.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
our immune systems are just so used to encountering new things that actually helps us, and that's not everyone can do that, right? But I
Right.
think it's definitely a thing. I when we get on a plane, I wipe the tray table and the armrests. That's like one of the first things I do. And I even wipe the little thing on the seatbelt, like
Oh, yeah.
whatever you have to touch, the screen, I just real quick with an antibacterial wipe, washing your hands. And sometimes you're not able to. So I do have like hand sanitizer. So I firmly believe that washing your hands is probably the best thing. My mother is a nurse, and one of her specialties was infection control.
Oh,
So I grew up in a house where washing your hands was constant, and I think that we do that a lot. I think that we eat, particularly when we're on the road, we probably eat better on the road than we do at home.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that well, partially because someone else is cooking it. So there's always time
Yeah.
to sit down.
Right.
It's not that I have to cook for an hour and a half or Mark's cooking for an hour and a half and then we take an hour to eat. It's just an hour and that's kind of great.
Hmm.
So I think that we eat better because it's not as much of a process sometimes.
Right. Less
Um,
shopping, less schlepping, and less
yes,
cooking.
yes.
Right.
So, and then you mentioned medicines. So I take with me, I have like a little kit and it has little tiny containers, and I might have like I have Pepto-Bismol, I have charcoal because charcoal pills like are good for a lot of things in the GI tract.
Uh-huh.
Um, I take Benadryl, just like basic things, some Pepto
Hmm.
chewables, whatever. Just an Imodium. Never leave the house on a trip without Imodium.
Okay.
It
Good
has
tip.
saved us once or twice.
I bet.
And I always like, I make sure I have just really basics, not a ton of any of it, but just very basic things with us, just in case. And, I rarely have to use any of it, but it's there if we need it.
Those are good tips to have because most of the issues that I've heard that people have and I've experienced personally is definitely GI related, something food related. There's a
Yeah.
lot of foodborne illness out there, isn't there?
Right. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We were actually in Brazil 2 weeks ago, and we ate like 3 dozen oysters between four of us. Uh, but I put one in my mouth, I bit down, and I was like, I knew immediately it was bad, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
and out of 3 dozen oysters, one being bad isn't so, it's not bad odds really. But I just got a napkin and I took it out. And I think that that's important. Just pay attention to how things taste.
Right.
And, when you're in out of the way places where you can't drink the water and you're not like on a resort or something, you need to be careful about eating raw foods.
Hmm.
Um, because, like fruits and vegetables, salads, things like that get
Right.
washed in
Yeah.
that water that you're not able to drink. So I think that that's kind of important. Just make sure that you're eating cooked food sometimes when you're, really off the beaten path. I try to
Right.
make sure we're all eating cooked foods.
Cooked food, I guess bottled beer, bottled water, and
Bottled water, bottled
yeah.
soda. I do have this little pen that cleans water should we
Oh,
need it.
yeah.
And I do take that like when we're hiking through like really rural places, and like
Hmm.
we spent I don't know, several days in a cloud forest in Ecuador. And when I say rural, they had running water at this place, but not much, right? I mean,
Right.
like a lot of water was used. It was just caught rainwater, which is probably cleaner than anything, but it's coming off the trees, and you don't really know what's coming through that. So I had that in case we needed it. They had ample bottled water, but also getting bottled water up to that place way high up in the mountains was probably difficult. So I felt like if I can supplement that by having cleaning our own water, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think those life straws are really important to travel
Mhm.
with. If you're going to be going to any areas that might be a little bit sketchy.
Yeah, and we've definitely traveled to a lot of those.
If we swing back home for a minute,
Mhm.
um, who would you rather have in the kitchen, you or Mark?
Me.
Oh, wow, without a doubt. That took you like no time at all.
No, there is no thought to that. I mean, Mark's not a bad cook. He's just I think he was a better cook before we got married. And
Hmm.
then I really enjoy cooking, and it's just like part of my DNA. So I've always just cooked, and I think I spoiled him a little, and he just doesn't cook very often now.
So in your kitchen, Jocelyn, are you buying whole spices, roasting them, grinding them, doing that kind of level of cooking, or are you experimenting with other kinds of ingredients and dishes and flavors, or what is Jocelyn like in her kitchen?
I do not grind my own spices unless they're things I've brought from somewhere. And I do have a spice problem. I buy spices on almost every trip. I bring
Hmm.
something home. I mean, and it may not be anything fancy. Like when we go to Europe, it's very difficult in America to find these little packets of dry vanilla. It's like vanilla powder.
Yeah.
Um, it's great for baking. Like you're not adding another liquid to things. Sometimes that makes a
Uh-huh.
difference.
Right.
My yaya, my grandmother, every time anyone went to Europe, she's like, "Can you bring me back some packets of vanilla powder?"
Oh,
Sometimes
wow.
it's something just that simple, and other times, there are these weird random things that I can't even translate to an English, or I've even forgotten the name of some of them, but I know what they smell like and I know what they taste like. And so I'll throw them into my cooking.
So you're like an artist in your kitchen, very improv-y kind of style, but you know in
Yes.
advance what you're going to be putting together?
Usually, I mean, sometimes it's completely fly by the seat of your pants, but
Uh,
I find that your nose leads you the right the right direction, right? And I'm constantly tasting things like when I'm making sauces or whatever. I might go through 50 spoons in a dinner, if I'm being really reckless in there and just, playing. And Mark's a good taster. I'm constantly like, here, what does this need? Does it need more salt? Should I put some lemon in that?
Oh, that is
And
so much fun.
I can look into my kitchen. I have cookbooks from all over the world.
Oh, wow.
um, that's something that it's sometimes really hard to find them in English. When we were in Brazil, Mark's Brazilian dad gave me um, his wife just passed away during COVID, and he gave me her favorite cookbook, which brought me sort of to tears. And it's an
Yeah.
amazing cookbook. It's all in Portuguese, which I know enough of to usually get by, but occasionally there are things in there that I still have to use translate. Foods are sometimes a difficult translation. So, you know, just Google Translate, and a great cookbook from somewhere is a fun way to get going in the kitchen, I think.
So you just touched on something that is very interesting to me, and probably a lot of other people are those of you who are polyglots who speak several languages. So how many do you speak?
Oh Lord, I am not a polyglot. Mark certainly is.
Uh-huh.
Mark speaks quite well, and he picks things up. It's just his God-given gift. We all got something, and that's his. Um, I I can be a very polite tourist in several languages. I can, at the very least, I can go in somewhere in France and say, "Je ne parle pas français, je suis idiot." I don't speak French. I'm an idiot.
Very
And that
impressive.
it makes people laugh, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, how can I help you?" Um, but just we all try to get at least the basics of please and thank you, those things, and then basic verbs, and
Hmm.
nouns. And once you get that fairly well for like Portuguese, it's easy to jump off and figure those out in Italian or Spanish. Like I understand a lot of Spanish, but I think it's because we lived in Portugal, and
Oh,
and
right.
it's similar enough that I can deduce what it is. I also thank the nuns because when I was a kid, we were taught Latin and Greek roots. I went to Catholic school. So I learned those things, and it's paying off now. So
Right. It's giving you a little bit of a foundation to be able to jump around and understand language a little bit better.
yeah, it's very helpful. And then I have Mark who, speaks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
noticed that. He definitely has a feel for language, doesn't he?
he does. It's definitely a gift.
So, Jocelyn, without getting too cheeky, from a romantic point of view, isn't it kind of cool to say, yeah, we did it in 80 countries?
Yeah, it is.
I thought you'd say that.
We laugh about that sometimes,
Uh,
like, yeah, that's all I have to say about
right.
that.
Like we got to revisit such and such a city because we
Yeah,
didn't consummate.
the kids were up and sick all night that night,
Right.
so maybe we need to get back there.
That's funny. That is so funny. I was meaning to ask you that. I didn't know the right way to put it.
All right, you did.
Oh gosh. So tell everybody where we can get a hold of you, where we can watch you and Mark and watch anything that you're doing as far as your social.
So my social, I'm really just on Instagram at Jocelyn Wolters World. And then I also have Simply Jocelyn on Facebook. And that sort of started from the food stuff, like the Wolters World Eats things. Generally speaking, I'm just uploading a lot of stuff like I do on Instagram. It's just another, vehicle because some people don't like different platforms.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we're at Wolters World on YouTube. Actually, all the social media has Wolters World. And then we have Wolters World Eats and Wolters World Shorts if you're like into the quickies. And I know a lot of people like
Speaking
don't
of
like,
romance.
yes, no pun intended, but there it is.
Right, right.
So the shorts, the quickies are a lot of people don't expect that from us. They like our long 15-minute videos, like 10 things to look at country X, right? well, we're just going to break those 10 things up into individual things and put them on the shorts channel. Just to make it easier for people. And then Mark also has Professor Wolters, which is, his business side of things. And
Right.
if you want to learn about marketing, but also about how to YouTube, like how to do social media marketing and all of that kind of stuff, that's there. So
Wow. What's your favorite season?
my favorite season is summer. I do
Summer?
really like spring is a very close second. Like they're neck and neck, but I'll say summer first.
Huh. Have you ever been able to use super glue more than one time from the same jar or bottle?
Yeah. So
Ah, tell me how you do that.
there's this thing, and it had like, I don't know, had like a built-in wiper, and it was from, I think it was Gorilla Glue that I got. And it has a built-in wiper thing. And that's what I used to glue the felt on the bottom of the chairs. You have to have those little whatever, and they never stay on. So I super glue them on, but it had like a wipey thing.
Very valuable stuff. You see, you can learn from these podcasts.
Absolutely.
For what in life do you feel most thankful?
Oh, my family. I mean, and not just my husband and my kids. I mean, my nuclear family is first, but my parents and Mark's parents and my sisters, like they've made me who I am.
Wow. What's one of your favorite cheat treats?
Oh, Reese's peanut butter eggs.
Oh, are those only available around Easter?
Yeah, and Mark buys me enough of them, like toward the end, like right about now, he'll start stockpiling them, and I'll have them
Hmm.
until about September, October. I just like, I ration them, but I eat those pretty much all year.
Isn't it amazing just how magical the combination of peanut butter and chocolate is? And it has been forever. Candy bars with those
Yep.
ingredients always seem to do the
Uh,
best.
Nutty bars would be my second thing too.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
uh, and I think they changed their name. They used to be Nutty Buddies, maybe. The Little Debbie snacks.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you ever tried the Trader Joe's dark chocolate peanut butter cups?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. Do you have a Trader Joe's anywhere
Excellent.
nearby?
It's about 2 hours away.
Okay, well, next time you're near one, pick those up. Those are pretty fantastic.
I'll let you know how they are.
Yeah, good. Okay, and what did you say was for dinner tonight?
I don't know. I mean, it's probably going to be a little bit of a fend for yourself night. I was looking, so it's Lent, and
Oh, yeah. That means you have to give up all the things you like. It doesn't make sense to me.
well, well, we're supposed to be taking up our cross. That's what that's about.
Oh, okay.
As a Greek Orthodox, I'm not supposed to be eating meat, and I kind of goofed today because I got that carne seca. It wasn't like carne seca like a meal. It was like beef jerky.
Hmm.
And I got some because I was at the hardware store and it was right there. And I had just been to the gym. So I'm just sitting there and I'm eating it and I'm like, oh, this is meat. So I'm having this feeling that I'm probably just going to eat some of these really great corn noodles that I get that are Italian. And it's just going to be noodles and like maybe some oil on them and some spices.
Wow, so it's noodle made from corn flour?
Yeah,
Wow.
they're really good. La Veneziane. It's a really great brand, and they have all different kinds. So not like everything, but I can get like capellini and spaghetti and fettuccine and elbows. There's just a lot, so they're
Yeah.
great.
So between sweet or savory or spicy, could you identify which of those three you would like most?
Savory,
Oh, yeah?
yeah. I'm definitely a savory kind of chick.
Okay, very good. Well, on that, Jocelyn Wolters, I want to thank you so much for joining me on 50 Tastes of Grey. I'd love to do it again soon.
Well, it was great. Thank you for having me.
What's your next destination before we say aloha?
Oh, I don't even know. I guess the next big trip, we are going to Israel, Jordan, and Greece. That's the next
Nice.
big one. Yeah,
I
I'm really
guess
excited.
you're going to be hitting 1 million visitors, 1 million subscribers to Wolters World very soon. Where do you think you'll
Yeah.
be?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna guess we'll probably be in Greece when that happens. But
Okay.
I'm not as good at predicting numbers as my husband is. So I don't know if you pose that question to him in his interview, it's probably a more accurate answer.
We did cover that, and I thought that it would be you guys would be in the promised land in Israel when you hit 1 million. But
That would
he
be
did
pretty
mention
awesome.
Greece and or Israel is what he was saying. But I'm
Okay.
thinking Israel. I don't know why.
Well, I think that would be pretty amazing. I'd be
Oh yeah,
happy with that.
we'll be plugged in. All of us will be watching Wolters World to see what you guys are up to.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks. We'll talk again soon. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Okay. Bye bye.
Aloha.